you need to be able to find what your family is. And family is not necessarily DNA. It's not necessarily blood. It's bigger than any one of us. So tonight, look around this room, because this is family. This is a group of people dedicated to principles that people have died for in this country for as long as this country has existed. And that I, as a straight, white, middle-class guy, assumed that all of us had, and had to learn the hard way that we don't have. So it's nice to come home. It's nice. My sister is here. She's my date this evening. So thank you for all of your love. They asked me for a listing of my comments before I was going to come up, and it's all on the back of this piece of paper. So needless to say, they have no idea what's going to come out of my mouth, and I have no idea as well, so I will apologize in advance. But I lived here in Rochester for 15 years. My son was born in Highland Hospital. I made the first call to a gender center, which is where people went at that stage of life in the early 1980s when they had these questions in a conference room at Xerox at 801, which is not Xerox anymore. But it was the scariest call I'd ever made in my life. Because at that point, my secret wasn't my secret anymore, it was public. And while it was in my head, it seemed safe. We all have something about us that we know that nobody else knows. But accepting that and sharing that and recognizing that and then realizing what that could mean for us is both terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. So my journey from David to Donna is something that I'm incredibly proud of. I transitioned at a time when the transgender community needed champions, and I never asked to be a champion. I am a reluctant advocate, a reluctant activist, but until you can put a face to it, until you can get to know it on a personal level, it's hard to relate to something that is so far out of your thinking when you're comfortable in your skin, or you're comfortable in your sexuality, or you're comfortable in your own little world, to break out of that. So I've been incredibly fortunate that things happened when they did. My son is now 27, and he accepts me, my family accepts me. Within 6 months, we had 3 things happen in my family. My father passed away. My sister gave birth to a child that was born with multiple birth defects, and I came out to my family as trans. And at that point, I came out to her at the Coal Tower restaurant. So everybody here from Rochester, it was a Sunday morning, and so I tried to explain to her about trans, and she's like, "Are you telling me you're gay?" And I'm like, "That's not what I'm trying to explain, Mom. I'm trying to explain a deep discomfort about the roles that have been forced upon me for my entire life that I didn't ask for, but that I need to now start to ask some very difficult questions." But these aren't things you can get back. You can't say, "Hey, I think I'm transgender," and then come back the next day and say, "Oh, freaking hey, what was I drinking?" But to be judged based on their work, not based on coming out as trans or as on any other criteria, to me, that I didn't know. As a straight white middle class guy, I think they took my level of privilege while I was sleeping. They did this little gender change thing, and my privilege card seemed to have disappeared. And I'll tell you how the funny thing is that my car insurance rates went down because women are safer drivers. But my salary went down too, so it's not so fun. Life is full of irony. I was going to an event and they sent a driver to pick me up. This is the ignorance, and I mean that with a little I, not big I, because I differentiate between ignorance of people who are willfully ignorant and people who just don't know. So I got picked up by this driver who was this little man, and I'm bigger than he was. I was going to help him help me take my luggage out. But I could have carried him and the luggage. I'm just saying. So, anyways, we started driving. I explained I'd been married for 20 years. I have a son. I mean, I've been doing all these really interesting things. And he asked what I was doing. I was traveling because I wrote a book. And I expected nobody would ever read it, but apparently people did. And that opened a number of doors. And he said, what was your book about? And typically I'm fairly vague. I mean, like just yesterday on the plane, a woman asked me that question. I'm like, well, it's just a really interesting book. You gotta look it up. But it was about my experience transitioning, because when I grew up, there were no books about this. And it's not a how-to book. If anything, it's a how-not-to book. Because I had to learn things the hard way, but I assure you that in life, the lessons you learn the hard ways are the lessons you learn the best. If you survive them, and I have survived. But the funny thing was, he said, so what is your book about? I said, well, I'm a transsexual. And he said, you're a transsexual? I said, yeah, I am. And he said, I've never met one. And I said, I'll bet you have, you just don't know. We're like X-Men. We're like mutants. Because all we want to do is blend in. All I ever wanted, like this morning, I went to breakfast and the woman said to me, good morning, ma'am. I said, how many in your party? I mean, to me, that's what this was about. Inner peace, personal happiness, interacting with the world in a way that you get to choose rather than is forced upon you. That's what this was about. It's not the clothes, it's not the sexuality, it has nothing to do with the common things or themes that people seem to want to assign to, oh, you're transgender, so you're this. It's not. But anyways, he said, well, wow, you have a son? I said, yes, I do. He's 27, going on 15 or 16, I think. And he thought for a minute, he goes, wow, they must have come a long way in these surgeries if you could have kids now. I said, wrong parent. I said, yes. So then I had to hear, well, you're an adult, you're having an affair. I'm like, what? You're a drug user. What? You're a child molester. I'm like, I don't even want to hear anymore. But eventually she got warm. Although she had no idea. I mean, there was nobody who would know. But the fact is that I have come a long way in my life after having come to peace with me, so that when I face my last moments, I'll be okay. When I look at her daughter, who was born with a deformed jaw, this stuff gives me goosebumps. Her daughter was born and rushed to the NICU here at Straub. And so she has never lived a quote-unquote normal day in her life. And you put normal to me as a quote word, because I don't even know what normal is. But this is a child who changes everybody around her. Just to be near her, she is my role model, because she's not afraid. She was just in the talent competition, and she loves to dance. She loves to sing, so she's in the choir. She can't speak. She's got a tube in her throat and a tube in her stomach. But she loves music and she can hum. She doesn't know that she should expect less out of life. And she refuses to accept that, and frankly, that empowers me. Because if I can live like that, you can live like that. For me to come and I brought an extra bag just to get stuff at Wegmans. I got his life. I wonder, is Weigel stays on the airplane, if going through JFK, I can just see them trying to steal this stuff from me. But the fact of the matter is, at the heart, my heart, this is home. No matter where I go, I've lived here for a long time, and this is my family. So anything I can do to help change our world, I am up to the challenge, and I challenge each of us to make that same commitment. And if we do, we will. Thank you very much.
Welcome back to the stage.